What's up everyone, Mike here from The Art of Guitar, here with another drum-themed lesson. I guess I really wouldn't call this a lesson. This is more of an example of my favorite LARS ULRICH techniques. And you might learn a few things, but really I'm just here to demonstrate them. I won't be going in-depth and teaching them. They're going to put together a drum program pretty soon, but all that stuff will be on there. So what I did was I just combed through all of my favorite albums and all of my favorite techniques, and here they are. Starting with the cymbal choke. So Lars does this probably on every song. That's just where you hit a cymbal, and instead of letting it ring out like this, you can tell I'm hitting a kick drum with it too. You use the other hand typically, and you stop it, you choke it. Makes it stop. So you hear that a lot when he goes like. He'll even do really fast chokes, like. It's very effective. Sometimes you don't want a cymbal to ring out through the whole thing, so that's when chokes become available. I don't have as many toms as he does. He has 4 in the front, 2 on the side, but I'm just going to kind of show you with what I have. So just moving from drum to drum. Sometimes I'll hit the kick drum with every time I switch a drum. It's a good way to keep yourself on in time. So do that if you're having trouble just doing that with your hands. You'll notice Lars has a really strange way of crashing on beats besides the first beat. A lot of drummers will just crash on the 1 just to say, okay, here's the next measure, here's the next part of the song. But Lars is really good at crashing on the 2, sometimes the 3 and the 4. It just depends on the song. But here's an example. If you're just doing a straight beat, here's what most drummers would do. Okay, but Lars would crash on the 2 instead, so I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. Lars really gets the most out of his tom hits, so if you listen to Dyer's Eve or Motor Breath, he really showcases the toms a lot, and he even uses them in a lot of beats, so Enter Sandman, for example. So whenever you hear stuff like it's fun to not always hit the snare, sometimes just go to the toms. In Dyer's Eve, I don't have nearly enough toms, but he does this long roll where it's just like that's just a really generic example of what he does. And then Motor Breath is just a whole bunch of chaos. Once again, I don't have enough toms, but I saw him do this one time with this many toms, and he did something like. Something like that. So what I really love about what he does in Seek and Destroy is he'll be just playing a beat, and then he'll go to halftime, and then come back. And it really drives the song in a cool way. And then he also does the opposite. He'll do double time beats, and then he'll just come back to a regular beat, and it just sounds really cool. So here's an example. If I'm doing halftime, then I jump into the normal beat. So it's fun to practice that, because halftime can really affect the way the song feels, and then it comes back and it feels very powerful. Notice the crash on the 2 there, so all the techniques are going to start coming back together. Okay, so now double time, and then I'm going to switch it right after a couple of measures. Okay, here we go. So whether you go halftime back to the normal beat or double time back to the normal beat, it could really change the feel of a song. I like how he does that. Playing really fast 16th notes on the hi-hat, like a swooshy hi-hat, and being able to keep a beat can be pretty tough after the first couple of minutes. So you really have to build up your endurance. So here's an example of that. If you did a slower version of it, it would be. But if you think about how fast Jump in the Fire is, it's pretty fast, not to mention when they play live, Lars always speeds things up another 20 to 30%. So try this one time. And Lars is great at doing this beat. I'll just do a very generic version of it to start off with. I'll go kind of like on the ride for like something off Kill 'Em All. So we would call that the offbeat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we have the onbeat, which is the opposite. So it's on the downbeat. So we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So here's what that would be. So as a drummer, it's really cool to practice going between those two, even within songs like he does sometimes. So start off with the on beat and switch to the off beat. Go back to the on beat and see if you can keep it steady, okay? Now if you listen to Shortest Straw, one of my favorite songs off Justice, he does a version of the on beat. So it's the snare hitting on all the downbeats. But he does some really cool kick techniques. I don't know what exactly, but I like taking this and making it its own technique, where it's a driving on beat, slowed down with some different kick drum patterns. So you can do something like this. So I had to get really good at different speeds of double bass. Even slow double bass could be tough because it's hard to keep it even. So I started there, and then I started going faster and faster to see how fast I could go. And eventually I wanted to get to like Dyer's Eve levels, which I'm still working on to this day. So here's slower double bass. And then you can speed that up to whatever you need. Lars does a great job of using the toms to really punch through a riff. So for example, Creeping Death, or there's a lot of songs with this example, he would do something like. So the first example, I just used single strokes on the floor tom. The next one I doubled up like this just to make it even heavier. I've seen him do both. For him, the bell tolls too. No one's ever accused Lars of being super dynamic as a drummer. It seems like sometimes he really only has one level that he plays at as far as intensity goes. And that's not bad, that's just his style. And it works really well for songs like Nothing Else Matters, whereas some drummer may have tried to do some ghost note type beat or whatever. But Lars just kind of powers through it and keeps it really tight. He'll do something like. Seems like an odd beat to play over a ballad, but that's what makes it Metallica. I always wondered what he was doing in Creeping Death when it goes, and there's a really quick tom sweep. I've seen two different ways from Lars, depending on what year you watch him drum this. Sometimes it's just toms themselves sweeping. He does this really great dig-a-dig kind of thing. That's just a quick one. You can add the left hand at the end to really give it an extra hit. Or what I like to do is I like to do 3 on the toms and a kick. So I found myself starting to use that in different situations, not just Metallica songs. I would do stuff like Now you'll find Lars likes to stick to certain kick patterns, and you could just sort of like feel it when he does it. It's kind of like do-da, do-do-da, do-do-da, do-do-da. So if you play this beat at almost any speed, you could hear a lot of different Metallica songs in it. So I'll just do a couple variations of speeds. So. I think I heard him do this one song. So I thought that sounded cool, and I thought, why not use it on the snare during a beat? Then I realized he does this in, for example, 1, like the end part. He'll be like. Just being able to do that really kind of makes a groove sound a little bit different, and it adds a little bit of a fill where you don't necessarily want to go all around the toms. Sometimes when a drummer starts to fill early, you could tell they made a mistake and they have to compensate by, doing a super extra long fill. And Lars does this, but it's on purpose. So for example, Nothing Else Matters, Sanitarium, he'll do this kind of thing. I call this the sneak attack, and it's really cool to do with the China cymbal. It's where you're doing a beat, and then on the E of a beat, so 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and it'd be like a 1 E, you'll hit a quick little crash. Oh, there's another one. Choking the cymbal on the sneak attack. So Sandman, for example. Didn't have to be fancy. Imagine if Enter Sandman went. Just wouldn't be the same. This was a huge thing to add. You know, we did the sneak attack before, but sometimes when he's doing quick little crashes, what I like is he likes to add kick drum rolls really fast. So whether it's 2 or 3, it really depends on the groove of the song, but either one can sound very cool. Let's say if you're just doing a beat and you want to hit a crash with a snare drum and a crash, doing 2 quick kicks is a lot of fun. Sounds great. If you want to get really crazy, try to do 3. So you got to fit 3 of them in. Like that, and you'll hear him do that all the time. So. Now before I heard Injustice for All, I didn't know you could hit anything besides the snare while you're hitting the hi-hat. But I know he uses a remote hi-hat for this, but I started to kind of copy him and do stuff like this. For example, in Injustice for All. So I thought that was a really cool concept. If you could reach over and hit this like that, it's great. I've tried to do it both ways. Reaching over that way, it just doesn't feel right. You can do it if you just sort of practice going like this underneath your hi-hat hand. It's kind of weird, but it's a great way to do a fill and not interrupt the right hand. You'll find that in a lot of Lars Ulrich fills, he likes to start it off with a certain thing I call the Lars Ulrich snare pattern, and that's where he goes like this real quick. And that just seems to be a little jumping off point to do a bunch of different fills. Boom. Sanitarium, he does this a lot. And you can do this on toms as well, but it always starts off with that same kind of feeling. So on the snare. So it's fun to practice in a circle, to do a beat and then just do some kind of fill off that idea. Da 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 is the beginning of it, okay? All right, syncopated hits we talked about a little bit already, but it's so important. A lot of my students, when they first start out, they have trouble feeling that up hit. And it's a big trick that a lot of bands, it's not really a trick, it's just a technique that a lot of bands use, especially bands like Judas Priest, to give you a different kind of sensation so you're not just hitting the 1 all the time. So Sandman's a good example of this. When it's da 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 boom, that's on the and of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you kind of glaze over the 1 beat, so it gives it a different feel. So here's what I'm talking about. Without it, it would be kind of boring. It'd be. See how too straightforward that seems? So doing that syncopated hit could be a great way to really enhance your riffs and give you a different feeling than the boring normal downbeat hits. This seems like a minuscule thing, but he does it so much and it's actually pretty cool. He'll be counting off while a riff's happening and he'll hit on the 2 and the 4. So once again, think of Sandman. Doo doo. Now it seems like a small thing, but imagine if he always counted 1, 2, 3, 4. It seems a little bit mechanical. But if you could do the 2 and the 4, kind of like you count in jazz, that's kind of, I just thought of that. It gives it a different feel and it builds the anticipation in a different way. So if I just did straight, I don't know. I don't really like it as much. Maybe I'm just used to the real way. But then the 2 and 4. See the difference? It leaves a little more space for the riff to come out. You're not covering every beat. All right, guys, so those are the Lars Ulrich techniques that really changed my drumming. I have a ton of drum idols. I might do more of these for you if you like this one. But I really wanted to start with someone I knew the most about, Lars, because he was one of my first drum idols. And I'm glad I studied his techniques because he kind of gave me a little bit of a different look at the drums than maybe a more, streamlined drummer would have done. So I'm really happy to have him as one of my drum idols because of that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully this was entertaining and maybe somewhat educational, and we'll catch you at the next lesson. Thanks.